Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Naked Talk with Jess podcast. Today is going to be a good one. I have Whitney Abraham on the podcast today. We initially met, I kind of stalked her on Instagram, so she didn't really know me yet, but been following her. She's amazing. And then we met in person in December 2019 at the Faster Way conference. And I wasn't going to say anything to her, but I'm so glad I did. I went up and we connected, and the rest is history. Here we are. She is a certified Faster Way coach and a business coach. And let me tell you, this girl is awesome. She's genuine, and she will definitely help boost your confidence. So let's get started. Welcome to Naked Talk with Jess. Whitney, how are you doing today?
I'm so good and so honored to be able to be in community with you and have conversations that I think are really freaking important that not enough people are talking about. So thanks for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm glad you could be here. So I was sharing a little bit about how we met, and I thought it was really cool that I kind of expressed to you some of my hesitation and things that I had going on. And for those that have listened to the podcast from the beginning, they probably could tell I was very, very uncomfortable talking about these things. I'm still not 100%, but you know what? And I know you're all about this too, Whitney. I'm just pushing through and getting out of my comfort zone because I know it's so needed. And if you're new to the show, we are talking about shedding shame around our bodies and sex and just women's sexuality in general, and why do we have all this shame around it? So, um, that's what we kind of talked about. And you shared something with me that you've had on your heart and you've been doing too. And I said, oh my gosh, you've got to be on the show because we need more women just taking a stand and being a voice for that woman that says, hey, I can be a mom and I could still love sex and I can have my sexual identity and do all those things without shame. So tell us a little bit about just when you and I were talking, your passion and what you have coming up.
So it is so weird. She's downplaying this because she came up to me and she was nervous to come up to me, which is so cute and so unnecessary. But she's talking to me about what she's doing, and my whole body is breaking out in like chills as she's telling me what she's doing, what this podcast is about. Because behind the scenes, I had been quietly planning a project that I knew was going to launch in 2020. And I hadn't really I told maybe like three or four people about it because I was also nervous about the subject matter. And so as Jess is telling me, I have this podcast and it's all about, sex in this phase of life. And, my background, your background is a conservative Christian, and how all of those sort of messages butt up against one another. And I was like, girl, you are not going to believe this, but I'm getting ready to write a book about my 2019 resolution, which was to never say no to sex. And when we looked each other in the eyeballs, we kind of knew we were kindred spirits at that moment. And we had to continue the conversation online because you're right. There are so many people that are not talking enough about this. And I think culturally, we have a lot of crap to sort through as women. We're told a lot of things about our bodies and sexuality and how we should be and how we should appear. And those things are conflicting messages, right? So sometimes from the conservative community, we hear things like, you should be good, you should be covered up, you shouldn't have sex, those sorts of things. But then mainstream culture tells us sex is power, use your body as a tool. And so all of these things kind of combat one another and create this very contentious and hard landscape for women, which confuses us, and keeps us from being able to really tune into what we want, what we desire.
Yes, and as you were saying that, Winnie, I was getting goosebumps again because you're right. And all these things went through my mind. If I tell her this, what is she going to think about me? I had no clue what you were doing. And that's why I know it was meant to be. And that also makes me think, how many more things have we missed out on, or people that needed to hear what we needed to say, but we allowed that to stop us? Because even I've done a lot of work on myself, and even still, I start have these voices in my head like, what are they going to think about me? Or I'm not going to say that, or, just, and a lot of it I've found through the years, and more I'm finding that most people are worried about themselves. They're not even thinking these things about me. I really went through that during my homeschool mom years. I just thought, oh my gosh, I changed the way I dressed when I was around homeschoolers. It was ridiculous. I just didn't want to be judged, I guess, or ostracized. And I think a lot of women go through that saying, if I say X, Y, Z, what is my community going to think, my family? And so, yes, it I had all these things in my mind, and now we wouldn't have had this. So I love that you're doing this as well, and just being that voice, because yes, it's true. Sometimes I think, well, I live in Texas and I'm this kind of way, or I'm with this group of people. So I automatically believe this, right? I had someone the other day, and nothing, they didn't mean anything by it, but they said, well, you're a Christian, right? So as a Christian, you agree with blah, 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 the halftime show or whatever it was, the way they felt. And I'm thinking, one, I'm not upset because I've had to work through a lot of legalism in my own life, but also it just makes me think, what are they basing that off of? Does that make sense? Like, what are we
For sure.
basing these things off of to say that if someone's a fill in the blank, you should believe fill in the blank. And
And
it is,
that's why assumptions are so dangerous, right? We make these sweeping assumptions like you're X, so you must believe Y, when really there's no basis for like what somebody feels or believes, and that's subject to them. So that's part of the dangerous culture of identity. Like you are X, so you must believe Y. Well, yes, you are a Christian, but that doesn't mean that you hold yourself to, the restrictive thoughts that potentially have led you to this place where you felt trapped and like you weren't accepted. I always say that if there's something that I really care about or something that's like nagging me in my core and I'm afraid to talk about it, it means it matters.
yes.
And the benefit of sharing that is that we create community around those shared experiences, which mean something to us. It's the beauty of life.
Yeah, you're right, and I've looked back on different things that I've said, "Ooh, I don't know if I should say this," but it's been in my heart, and so I know it was put there for a reason, and when I finally push, yes. Um, Perfect example, I'm sharing on my Instagram this week about lubricants and lubrication. And I'm thinking, why am I so scared to share, to actually put this on there? But going back to those thoughts, and you know what? I had so many people reach out to me and say, "Oh, I didn't think to about even using lube, or much less reading the label." So I got started as a holistic health coach. Oh gosh, 9 years ago. And that's what I tell people: eat less crap, eat more food, read the labels, not only on your food, but your beauty products, and definitely your lube, because that's going in those delicate genital areas. Hello. Or hygiene products. So, yeah, I think, like you said, that's when it's going to be a big change. And we are doing stuff that's not really out there. I hear from so many women that they're like, okay, I want to learn about these things or learn about sex. Where should I go? Should I go to porn? And I'm like, no, like,
No.
do not, do not stop, do not collect, go, like, stop. Porn is
Oh,
not sex. It's entertainment. And this is without saying it's good or bad. You should do it or don't. I'm not saying that. I am saying don't go there to learn about sex. And so now we're having to undo a lot of this thoughts in women and men alike, and in marriages. So what we're doing is a new thing, and that can be scary, right, Whitney? But we're going to do it. Just
that's the
follow our
point.
heart, and if we know our intentions are there and are good, um, it we can't go wrong with that.
And I think it's really important that you bring up the point intention. For me, the intention for writing the book that I'm writing was to connect with other women who were experiencing similar things. The intention behind the resolution itself, the resolution to never say no to sex in the entire year, was about no one but me. And I get the question a lot like, "Oh, did you make that decision because you felt like it was gonna be good for your marriage? Or did you make that decision because you felt like, you were getting pressure?" No, I made the decision because I found myself opting out of sex for reasons that were all about me, and I knew I needed to make a resolution to show up for sex all about me.
Mm. I love that, because that's what I've shared too. I'd lost myself in motherhood. And then it's like, my husband was so supportive, so patient. He never even really said complained or anything. But like you said, I just one day said, I used to be sexy. I used to be fun. Like I used to love sex and I wanted to get that back for myself first. And I think when we approach it that way, yes, is your partner going to benefit? Heck yeah. But if you go into it like I want to please my partner, it's not the same as like this is
Mm-mm.
for me. I want um, a lot of times, even as moms, we start to see our body maybe not as, just our own now. Um, I had 3 girls, I nursed them. And so I think I just somewhere in there kind of just, I don't know if detaching from my body is the right way, but you almost start compartmentalizing, especially your breasts. Like, okay, that's for breastfeeding now. And now they're toddlers and they're hanging on you. You can't poop without them in the room. So then you don't even have that sense of privacy. Like, can I just go take a crap without an audience,
And
Like,
girl, you're speaking the Bible because I swear to you, it's like my body is a different wonderland than it was before. Like I made the mistake one time of measuring the distance between the bottom of my breast and my belly button, and that was a frighteningly small number. Like you do not need to know that number. Girls don't do that. Okay.
that's like me. I'm
But
like,
it is different.
if you're not familiar and if you're one of those people and hey, that was me who couldn't pick their labia out of a lineup and you decide to just get a wild hair and do that while you're pregnant or after you've had a baby for the first time, it could be a little alarming. And so that's what I kind of say, like, we lose that disconnect and then we go and say, oh my gosh, I was one of those that I didn't I didn't even know to call it a vulva. I called everything a vagina, but I was like, it's there, but I didn't really pay much attention to it unless it gave us issues, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's just getting our body back and like, hey, this is mine. It's beautiful. Let me learn like you said, the new wonderland and the landscape and go from there.
And that's the thing, like, the reason that you opt out of a sexual relationship with your partner is because you don't feel sexy yourself. At least that's what it was for me.
I can relate
So
as well.
I had to figure out how to make myself feel sexy again so that I could show up to that part of my life and experience joy in that way because I was removing that joy from the table because I felt a disconnect between that part of me. And so, you do have to kind of say, okay, this is a different landscape. Things are different now, but that doesn't mean the joy and the pleasure is gone. It just means I need to look elsewhere for that.
Yes, that I love that. And one of the things that I see in my clients that I help, and this was myself for decades, really, is um, a lot of us think sex is penis and vagina intercourse, and that's it. So if that can't happen or is not happening, or we're missing the clitoris altogether, and you're a woman who needs that clitoral stimulation for an orgasm and you're not having it, and then you're faking it, and you're like, oh, it can really cause a lot of problems. But what made me think of that is how we're talking about our babies and things postpartum or immediately postpartum. I know we're always postpartum once we have a baby, but there's not really a lot out there saying, hey, congratulations, the baby's healthy, awesome, but how are you going to maintain that intimacy with your partner, but also that intimacy with yourself? And I think that's a discussion that needs to be had. Um, and maybe that's where you can relate with me as well. Like you kind of just, it changes, but you don't really know what that means. And next thing you know, it's pushed so far down the list that it's just ignored for so long.
And girl, I'm the queen of like exiting postpartum. Like when I was postpartum with my first kiddo, first of all, my hormones were crazy out of whack because I was breastfeeding, I was pumping, and so my supply was like twin supply. So my hormones were crazy out of whack. And you know what that meant for my body and my poor vagina? It was a desert.
Yes.
There was not an amount of help that was going to make the situation enjoyable. So much so that my poor husband was like, I don't even want to like look at you in that way because I see you shrivel up and cringe whenever we even start to have the conversation about it. It was so awful and painful for me. I had no idea that was something that could happen to me. And I thought, my vagina is totally broken forever. I've had a baby and I will never be able to have sex and enjoy it again. But if I had known beforehand that my hormones were changing and that I could anticipate a lot of changes in that way, I might have been better prepared to like be more patient with myself and not be so alarmed about the situation.
Yeah, and to know that, hey, this is something that happens. Other women go through it instead of just dealing with it alone or not talking about it or thinking this is it. And then that's another thing I hear is painful sex. And women think, oh, well, it's just painful now. So they either avoid it or they just deal with it. And
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be that way. And the more we talk about it, the more it'll be like, hey, this is something you might experience. Here's some things you can do. And let your partner know as well. And that's where that thing of getting to know your body and your desires comes in, because maybe there's other things you can do besides what was your quote unquote kind of usual normal thing before kids or before whatever happens, right? Stress,
Mhm.
illness, death, all these things affect that. And so often we're in isolation for that, and we don't have those healthy resources to and people to go to for answers.
And do you know what's interesting about this, Jess? I feel like body image and body, just like awareness of your body, was the biggest barrier for joy in sex with me, both postpartum and beforehand. I think postpartum just accelerated, like ripped the band-aid off so that I really saw, oh, all of these things feel uncomfortable to me. And body image was like such a humongous component of that. I mean, I joked that like before I had kids, and I know I'm not the only woman who has done this, so I don't even feel embarrassed saying it, but there were times where I'd be like, "Okay, I need to hold my breath when we're doing it this way because I don't want my like, I don't want parts of my body to move," right?
Yes. Oh
And
my
all of these
gosh, yes.
ridiculous things. And when I told my husband that, he looked at me like, "Are you freaking crazy? Like, I want it to move. Please let it move," you know? Like, that's awesome. I wanna see that like, that is enjoyable to me. So, like, we are so wrapped up about the way our body looks in a certain position and, you know, don't want it to shake or jiggle or, like, bend and fold, and then you have babies and you have no control over what shakes, moves, jiggles, anything, right?
Yeah.
And you have to really come into this confidence, this personal self-confidence of where you are in your body and like, you know, you're here for this. This is a person you chose to spend your life with and make babies with, and if they can't see your parts move, no one can see your parts move.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's what I say, we're within, we're in a marriage, we're sharing homes and kids and taxes and, all these
Mhm.
things and money, and we're not able to not everyone, but, a lot of us are not able to communicate about these things. Whereas it's a vicious cycle if we would have just said, "Hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable about this," just like you said, your husband saying, "Hey, jiggle it, jiggle it, baby, jiggle it,"
Mhm.
and you're like, "Oh, okay, well, thought about all this for nothing." So I have a challenge I'm starting called Leave the Lights On and then in the bedroom. And it's true because, a lot of times we're worrying about things that the other partner, isn't even thinking about, or they actually might get really turned on by it. Um, but more so than that, us enjoying it and being confident. And I just one day thought, what if sex didn't happen to me, but it's something that I loved and I got just as much out of as the other person? And that just changed my mindset. And I'll tell you what, Winnie, I was more likely to make it a priority because I was getting something good out of it too. Um, I've shared before that, with when the kids were really little, like you get tired, and by the end of the day, like you're just tired for me. And so I thought, oh, what if we try sex in the morning? Just get up a little bit earlier. The kids aren't awake. And I just started noticing for me on those days, I just started off really confident and creative, and it just helped me. So find what works for you, but no, it doesn't have to be one certain way because we're all different and every relationship's different. I love that you found
Exactly.
that. So tell me a little bit more about, you said you started with that, but tell me just a little bit more about maybe some highlights of that journey or things that you started noticing along the way.
So it's incredible what happens to you whenever you make a promise to yourself and you keep it.
Yeah.
Incredible things happen when you can prove to yourself, I said this was important and I'm going to see it through. And I, use that lens for all these other areas in my life, but it's because of that experience of me taking the year and saying, you are going to show up every single year. You are going to say yes to this. And when you say yes, that means you participate. You show up, he finishes, you finish. Like that's the rule for you. You show up and you participate. There's no more shortcut. There's no more oh, I'm tired. You're going to show up to your life. You're going to claim your joy and you're going to be a participant in this. And it was one of the first times that I actually saw something through to the very end. And so the realization, the ripple effect of what happens to you when you prove to yourself that you're capable of seeing something through to the end that boosts your confidence in every other area of your life. And there were so many other things that I learned along the way throughout the year about making joy the center of why I do what I do in every area. And I also learned that, we again chose our partner for a reason. Like, we've had babies with our partners, we live with our partners, we've done all these things like you mentioned before. They picked you just the same way you picked them. They want all those pieces of you. And so you have got to remind yourself, when you extract yourself from true connection and joy because of fear of how you'll be perceived, um, you're hiding yourself from what we are made to do, which is connect and be in community with other people. So many incredible life lessons that happened from that experience. And the more I thought about it, and the few people that I mentioned it to, they were like, "Oh my God, you have got to write about this."
Oh, getting
And
goosebumps again.
I know, and I actually had a plan for a different book in 2020. I had it outlined, I had everything ready to go, and then I had a couple of conversations with some people that I know and love and trust, and they were like, "No, Whitney, this is it." And every step of the way, every person that I've talked to about the concept for the book has been so encouraging and so supportive, and that's just gasoline to the fire for me that proves we need to be having this conversation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I'm just thinking as you're saying that, or thinking for women that are like, I don't even talk about sex with my husband. We just kind of do it and feel our way through it. Did you go to your husband and just say, "Hey, babe, this is what I'm going to do," or were you kind of like to yourself, like, "All right, Whitney, this is it"?
So, because it wasn't about him, I did not include him in the discussion to decide to do it. Actually, 4 months into the year, he said to me, "I don't really wanna bring this up because I don't want it to change, but
Yeah.
but
Don't want
you
to rock
have
the
been."
boat.
Yeah. He's like, "But you have been really, participatory," and I was like, "Well, that's because I made the resolution to not say no this year, and don't make me regret
Yes. I
it."
love that. Yeah. So he was
And from that point on, he was like, "Okay, like, if this is important to you," and again, you have to be able to communicate with your spouse about what frequency feels appropriate to you. Again, we've been together for 16 years, so I think we've got, like, that kind of an understanded rhythm down where we didn't really have to have those conversations, but the longer the year went on, the more comfortable I felt expressing what I needed. I never initiated before this year happened, and now I'm an equal contributor in that arena. So it's incredible. It's incredible what can happen to you. Again, when you make a promise to yourself, whether it's in your fitness or in your sex life or anything, when you commit to something and you actually see it through.
Yeah, and once again, that goes back to I love how you said this was for me, not for him. Goes back to society, right? We just assume the husband wants sex more. And so what I found is two things are dangerous. A lot of things are dangerous about that, but it's an assumption. And one, it puts the female in a certain way. But what about a male? If their response and their sexual desire is lower, it makes them think something might be wrong with them. So we should not assume that, oh, men just want sex all the time. And I love that we can be just as equal partners in that and saying, "Hey, this is for me. I'm going to show up. And obviously, I want my partner to have pleasure, but I want to have pleasure as well." And if you have a great partner who's supportive, that person wants you to have pleasure. So
Mhm.
I think that's so important.
And I have a limited scope of experience here. I mean, I married my high school sweetheart.
Okay.
That being said, in the conversations that I've had with other women, men get theirs. Men show up to sex and they do what they like. They do what they want. Women, usually in my limited conversations about this, women are the ones who are embarrassed to ask for what they want, who are afraid to initiate something different that they want. So
Yeah.
again, like, I never really have worried about that because, like, I know my husband just confidently shows up and he gets what he wants, and that's great. And it was me. It was not about him. It was about me. And I think it's
Yes.
really funny because a lot of men anytime I write about the book on the internet, a lot of men are like, "Oh, a woman who gets it, yes." And I'm like, "Oh, honey, it's not about you."
That's right. We're not going back to pleasing it's pleasing myself.
Mhm.
And I did not marry my high school sweetheart. So I have some experiences to draw on, but you're so right. The first time, and once again, I was at Texas Christian, right? And I really wanted to wait till I was married, got to college. And since we're candid here, it's Naked Talk with Jess. I remember in high school, I'd, make out and then we'd start doing everything else. And I'm like, okay, this technically doesn't count, right? So I would do those things. And then in college, I'm like, I turned 21 and I'm like, I think I'm just going to give this a go. Had sex. And just like you said, I just showed up basically and like let it happen to me. And then I was like, oh, okay. So this is sex. Who knows what his experience was or where he learned from things. It wasn't good or bad. It just was kind of like, oh, this is how it is. And thinking back when I would have a sexual experience, I just let the man just do whatever. And I kind of like went with that. And I had seen porn a few times. And so I just kind of replicated that. I thought, oh, the woman should do this. And the one time, um, this is so funny looking back now, but it was horrifying during that. I remember being with a guy in college and I thought, I'm going to be really sexy. I'm going to like say stuff I wouldn't say. I'd heard it, and I remember saying like, which I don't ever even say this anymore, but I was like, I said cock and balls and it just horrified him. It didn't go well. And so I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe that's something we're not supposed to say." So then I just really shut down. I'm like, "Okay, I'm not gonna take control. I'm not gonna say anything." Um, and yeah, so it's embarrassing, but I share that to say, like, we can either have not ever done it or have an experience where it's like, "Oh, we don't really like go and say these things or say, 'Hey, would really like you to do this to me.'" And so yeah, a lot of women just don't do it. They just kind of show up and take the man's lead, and that's okay from sometimes, but to get to know your own sexual desires, I think is important, especially in a marriage. Like, you're in that bad boy for a long time. So
Mhm.
why not start to say, "Hey, I like this," or "Hey, babe, let's try this next time." Because like you said, usually the guy will get his, somewhere in the process.
And I don't know what it is, but I think men are just they are more apt to, like, follow their instincts than women are. Women survey. Women take landscape of, like, how they're perceived and how other people are reacting, and so they're highly influenced in that way, where men are less aware, I guess I should say. And again, I don't wanna make dangerous assumptions about genders, but again, in my limited experience, I know my husband's not really paying attention to a room the way I pay attention to a room. So I brought that same experience to the bedroom. Like, I'm surveying the way I'm perceived and how my body looks. And, I'm thinking more about what other people think and see and want than I am about what I want. And if you can just turn inwards and learn how to listen to your own body and your own instincts and just do what feels right to you, you are you're going to make leaps and bounds in your own personal relationship with sex.
Yes, and then it's gonna spill over into different areas of your life, and that's something too that I've talked about with other guests on the show. We're so compartmentalized, like, I'm a mom now. Oh, I'm a PTA mom now. I'm in the car line now, and, oh, now I'm like this hot, sexy, woman now, and it's like, it's so
Hmm.
confusing because 'cause you're switching back and forth all the time, whereas your sexuality is just another piece of you, just
Hmm.
like, any other piece. And something too, I was thinking, I was laughing the other day because how men have, or you've heard like, have their weenie dance, like the weenie dance. They all like either go side to side or round and round. They just, it's just out there. As they're boys, a lot of them, it's just there. And they just are like, and with us, it's like, don't, I think because it's kind of, yeah, it's hidden. Let's not touch it. Let's not look at it. And like you said, I think they just show up and they're like, "Yeah, this is my weenie. I got my weenie here and we're gonna do this." And and if not, I know how to take care of myself, in that way. And so I love that we're starting these conversations with women that it's just a way to be aware of and just let that go because sex is meant to just connect and enjoy each other. And it's hard
Hmm.
to do that fully when you're worried about would a PTA mom really want to do this in bed?
And this is the thing where I think the narrative around sex is dangerous, right? Because what you're talking about, those are identities, but sexuality is not an identity. Sexuality is a human experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So sorry, my dog is going to bark. So when we think about the things that we experience day to day, we eat, we sleep, we exercise, we have sex. Those are things we do, things we experience. But that doesn't make us who we are, right? And we've wrapped up our identity around sexuality, and that's super dangerous culturally. And that's why one of the very many reasons why we exit joy and pleasure, because we're, again, worried about the perception, when it has nothing to do. Like, what you decide to do in the bedroom does not define who you are as a person. It's not an identity.
And so much of that is wrapped around, like you said, that, and then also not just that it's wrapped around that one area, but it's putting that into a very small, a certain thing, this or that, good or bad. It's just, it's very, like you said, it's just very confining, and that's just a piece of your everyday life. But because there is so much taboo and shame around it, it just becomes this really big deal. And we just do everything we can to try to hide that. And like you said, even when no one's there, I've been like that for years. Like, okay, would I disappoint? It's just crazy. Like, I'm a quote unquote good girl, and should I be doing this? So yeah, let's just leave that crap in the outside world and enjoy yourself.
Right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great for us to put all the baggage down for just like 30 minutes and like enjoy ourselves and be present in our body with the person that we are the most connected to in the world? Wouldn't that be great if we just left all the shit behind?
It would be amazing, and I have been doing that. That's how I
Amen.
know. Like, it's
Mm.
it's so much better, and I've said before too, like, I was one of the women who would fake orgasms for years, and I wasn't doing it intentionally. I just had never had experienced one, and I wasn't sure I knew, like, how I thought you were supposed to sound. And then a friend said, "Well, if you're not sure you've had one, then you have not had one." And that really made me say, "Oh, okay. So there's more to that." And I didn't know about the clitoris and stimulation a lot, and never masturbated because I grew up, like, you don't do that. Good girls don't do that. So once I became in touch with my body and just learned more about it, then I was able to fully experience that and know that, not that it's a end all be all, right, for sex. It's not a performance thing. It's not a thing to check off the list, but that was for me. And I love life a lot more on this side of that, for sure.
And like, if you're having sex with a partner that loves you, that cares about you, they want to do what you like. They want
Yes.
you to be enjoying it. So, you don't have to be some like hidden 6-digit code that they have to guess what the numbers are. You
Yes.
can just say what you want because they want to give it to you.
Yeah, and like you said, especially, if I love how you said the 30 minutes, a lot of us are so busy, we have to really be intentional to work sex in. So why not make it, like, cut all that crap, cut the time down. Hey babe, I really would like this. I love it when you do that. And show them, because they cannot read your minds just like we can't read theirs. And so I think that's so important in all areas, right? For communication, but especially in the bedroom. Just tell them what you want.
Amen.
Yeah.
Love it.
Like, what time is it? Can I get
I
across
know.
town to my husband now?
Get there, girl.
I'm ready. I live in Houston. It's a long way, but
Mm.
we can make that work. So yeah, I love all this. And what else do you want to share with someone listening that's like, okay, Whitney, this is great, but I don't even know where to start. What would you suggest to them, just to kind of get them in the mindset right to do something? It could be in sex, or it could be any area that they want to be more intentional about.
So, I mean, I think if you know that you want to be more present in your relationship, in your physical relationship with yourself or your partner, if you know you want anything, the first step is identifying, this is a thing for me that I'm not making a priority that feels important to me, right? That's determining your, not necessarily your core values, but determining like what's of priority to you right now. You make it a priority, and then you say, I'm going to commit to this. Here are the small ways that I can commit to it. You don't have to be as extreme as me and say every time he approaches me, I'm going to show up for it because I knew I was not going to initiate. You like have to know your boundaries, I guess is what I'm
Right.
saying. Like know what's unreasonable. You wouldn't say I'm going to run a 10K tomorrow. You would say I'm going to plan a run in 3 months and I'm going to train incrementally for it. So for me to say I'm going to have sex every day from 0 was foolish and I knew that. So I said, when he shows up and he acts interested, I'm going to show up to the table and I'm also going to participate. I'm not going to phone it in. And that was the baby step that I took. And obviously that has changed and evolved and it's grown over, over time. But if I had started out by saying something like, I'm going to have sex every single day, I would have gotten so down on myself. I would have quit before I had the chance to even succeed. So set some realistic expectations and boundaries around what is possible there. But if you said it's important, honor that it's important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's right. Because if not, it's going to get just like other things go down by the wayside and go down your list. And we're always, most of us have calendars and schedules that are full, and you don't want it to be something that, oh, I didn't get to that, this time. Yeah. So make
Hmm.
it important and show up. So I love that, Whitney. Is there anything else you want to share? I still follow you on Instagram. I love all your things on there. Can you share a little bit of where to find you
Hmm.
and then your book, a little bit about when you have that scheduled or anything else that they can um, follow?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram. It's Whitney Abraham. You can find me on the internet. My website is whitneyabraham.com. I currently am working hand in hand with all of my one-on-one clients. The book will launch. The book is called Yes. It will launch later on in 2020. Working actively to try and get that wrapped up. And I have a dream team behind me that's trying to just get it in front of as many people as possible. So I'm really excited about that coming to fruition. And yeah, the party is on Instagram stories. So usually I'm having lots of candid conversations just like these on Instagram stories every day.
Yeah, really good. And okay, well, go follow her, y'all. She's amazing. I love seeing someone else have candid combos because we don't have time to, as my best friend would always say, to pussyfoot around. We need to get this out there and give information that can impact our lives and be more the better our life is, it gives us that energy to pour into others as well. So we don't want to forget ourselves. So I love this. Thank you, Whitney. I want to have you back on and keep me updated on this book. And it's Yes.
Hmm.
So I love that as well. Love other strong women who have a heart for women making an impact. So let's keep doing it, sister. I still have goosebumps. This is amazing.
Yay!
So
Thank you so much.
all right. Well, that is another episode of Naked Talk with Jess. If you have not subscribed, please do so you don't miss out. You can subscribe there, leave a rating and review. I really appreciate that. If you know someone who could benefit from this, share it with them. And I look forward to some Naked Talk with you soon. Bye.